Hello and welcome. Today I'm back to this. Been a few days, but I was basically figuring out how I wanted to do scheduling for this because every day was too much if I wanted to actually talk about topics. So I've decided I'm probably gonna keep it to basically Monday, Wednesday, Friday, except not every few Fridays I'm busy, so it's gonna be like Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, every however many weeks. But because of that, it will be easier to have stuff that I can think about to talk about instead of just being entirely random with my discussion. Like today because I was browsing manga online, I saw like a manga version of Soul Land, or one of the Soul Land stories, which Soul Land is also Douluo Dalu, is the, I don't know, English writing of the name. I don't really know the pronunciation, but that's just sort of how I've always read it. And that's a book that I read a fan translation of, like over 6 years ago now. And it was one that it's kind of hard to reread because it's not really exceedingly well written, but it is fun. So it stuck with me as a book that I read, and seeing that reminded me of it. So that's something I was going to talk about. And then that made me think of other stories that I read like that far back, and which ones like were noteworthy, and that got me thinking about what King of the Battlefield, which I can't remember if I think it's Korean. Like it's a Korean story that is like, it's not terrible, but it's not great. Like I felt it was never an exceptionally great story, but it kind of, I think after a certain point it tried to be more than it could, and it just kind of dragged on, and it lost what kept it fun for me. But I'm gonna start by talking about Douluo Dalu. I'll probably call it that. I'll pronounce it like that. The pronunciation's probably wrong, but I apologize ahead of time to anyone who might actually have a proper pronunciation for it that might listen. But like, it's not the most, it's not an absolutely unique story, but it does, to me, have like a pretty, I guess it's kind of unfair to phrase it this way, but it does a good job of not like leaving an absolutely awful message, I think, for people. Like, there's far too many stories that I've read that are like, the message they tell is like the not really lessons, but like the characters are not good people, and it's not made explicitly clear that they're terrible people, and that kind of, to me, that doesn't work as well, because like when they try to be like, oh, the main character, he does these absolutely awful things, but he's the main character, so he has to be a good guy. This Douluo Dalu is very, I would say it's pretty basic as a story. Oh, he didn't hit me, weird. But like, the benefit of that is that it doesn't like it has good people and bad people, but it's fairly like straightforward good and bad. Like eventually a plot point that is fairly major is that the beasts that they have been hunting, because in this story it's like, I can't remember if it's cultivation or what, they gain levels, and then every 10, 15, like at a set intervals, they need to get rings, which are sort of rings from spirit beasts or something along those lines is the terms used, and it's very much directly drawn from like the rings of a tree. So it's they need, and so the older the beast they kill, the more power they get. And so there's like, eventually it's made very clear that, hey, it's pretty messed up the degree to which they are hunting these beasts, and that is a positive message. Again, that's one of the more important messages overall. And like the fact that the primary message, one of the major like plot elements of the story is that, hey, you should respect nature, is it's a good message. It's not done too like overbearingly, because that's useless actually, but because the characters have like good reasons to care about the people. So like obviously it would be good if they cared just because, hey, these creatures are going extinct. That would be happier. But like the way the story is told, it doesn't feel unnatural. It's not like, oh, the characters started out like being strongly anti-animals and anti-nature, and then suddenly out of nowhere they become pro-nature. That's not what ends up happening. It's just sort of, they learn because of a friend about the actual scenario, and so they react based on getting new information, and that's a good overall message. Just like probably the most positive part about it. I would say that the story definitely gets pretty repetitive after a while, I feel. Like, I would not say it gets bad, but it's like, it's very much the main character is the best. He does not struggle much. And like, there are moments of struggle, but it's not pressing. It's like, oh, he's special because of this and that. Like, it has a lot of common tropes and stuff that can be negative, but if it's being read as just a for fun story, I think it's great at that. I think there are better for fun stories, but it is what it is. But I've also learned recently that the series that has come from it, starting from this first like series of book, has gone a little, maybe not off the rails, but it has very much... five golds may be better. But like it's gone to number 5, and from the title, it's like the 5th book is following the reincarnation of the main character from the 1st book, which is kind of wild, especially with context for what happens at the end of the 1st book / in following books, which I have not read following books because, I mean, yeah, I messed up. I got cursed, so I'm doomed. Though with the absolution, I'm good. But yeah, it's kind of... I think it has solid elements, but what I've read roughly from the 2nd book, nothing really new gets added. Nothing hugely new gets added within the first little bit, so it feels very samey. But what I can do is I'll talk a little bit about how, like, what the story being told is based on what within the story actually stuck around with me. Like it's a very... Oh, I messed up. It's a relatively basic story with a few unique elements. Oh, actually, I just remembered that I need to get this up a level, so if I can, that would be great. But like, I think from my going off memory, compared to most other books that I've read, the power upgrading system in this series of books is at least somewhat unique in that there's like, while it does do the common, or the fairly common trope of after X amount of levels you get an upgrade, that type of thing is fairly common. It does have the relatively unique element of the upgrades which the characters can get are determined by the spirit beasts that they hunt, and it has the traits, which is kind of a fun element to add to the story, and the powers. And like, obviously it kind of follows the general everything goes, this is the perfect power every single time. Though actually, I think in the later phases where the character gets kind of desperate, they don't actually... I think one of their powers that they get isn't the perfect choice, which is kind of nice, because like, if every upgrade is perfect, then it kind of brings into question what the point is of having different potential options, but the powers are fun, and the characters, while relatively forgettable, because I can't remember basically any characteristics from the characters, despite, well, it's been a while, so it's reasonable, but like, other than the main characters, the main two, there's very little memorable throughout about the characters. Like, admittedly, there is a character whose entire shtick is that they are overweight, which is maybe a little iffy. So they aren't totally, like, just a gag. They are at least... Oh, they are kind of creepy, actually, if I remember correctly. Thinking about it more, there are some creepy characters. I mean, the fact that they're creepy is not played off as it being positive. It is played off as kind of a joke, if I remember. But it's still a little better than having the main character who is always portrayed as always correct being super creepy. Yeah, there's definitely some stuff that, if it was more memorable, would definitely be negative about them, but what helps is kind of those types of things are easy to forget because they're not a central part of the story. I don't really need money. Damage to get an altar. Potions, I don't really want potions, and I can just do this if I want. Three +1s. That's pretty good. More damage when I take damage. Ooh, tactical reload. No, that's not the one I wanted to click. I want a tactical reload, because that would have been boom, spam, boom, spam. It would have been so strong. But, oh well. But it's... yeah, Douluo Dalu has positive elements. I think it does a interesting element of sort of power scaling with like an eventual, fairly frequent in these type of stories, a method to become like a god, which I think it does it in an okay-ish way, because it's kind of an interesting, it's not super trivial for the characters to become uber strong. It's sort of, I mean, it's really mostly a matter of luck, but why am I getting no infusions? I haven't seen a single infusion room, though I might have, and I might have skipped it, but... exchange a trait. Random new trait. No, my traits are good enough. I don't want a random one. Pretty good. This is a weird boss to have. Hey, the absolution finally kicked in. Did it remove the curse that I had? I think it must have. It didn't, then I don't know what the point is, but... so, yes, that's that story. What I might talk about now is King of the Battlefield, which I mentioned. I believe it's a... Dex. I believe it is a... oh, the curses don't get removed by getting absolution. Lame. I believe it is a Korean novel. It might be a web novel. It might be a like fully released novel. I'm unsure. I've only read a like fan translation of it, and even that I didn't finish it because eventually it became, yes, perfect. Assuming, yes, it's a canon. So now I have that character is going to be unlocked. Wonderful. Now I've unlocked, after this, if I win, I will have unlocked all the characters. That's great. Eye patch. Secret rooms. Helmet. I'd rather have the damage, because maybe eventually I'll learn about secret rooms in this game, but for now, I'm good without it. But, oops, ooh, what did I click? I didn't know there was something you could click that would trigger that. Did I click this? Oh, if you click that, it opens that. That's good to know. Better be careful. I'll see if I can get an offhand that I can use. I don't think I will be able to, but yeah. King of the Battlefield. It's not, from my memory, it's not the most unique story, but it is, if I remember, it is basically a post-apocalyptic alternate world story. Except, like, it's not post-apocalyptic because it's in a... The original world is being destroyed, but they got transported to the new world, making it so that you don't actually experience the post-apocalyptic or actively apocalyptic world. Like, it's not really post-apocalyptic, but like the world can be destroyed, so the gods or something brought them to this new world. And so that's how that story goes, very, very roughly, but like it starts out kind of fun with some like elements that are common, but relatively fun with like, oh, he reincarnated back in time with knowledge that makes it so he can, you know, just do better. But it is kind of interesting because he tries to just keep himself separate from everyone, which is like, whatever, it's fine. And he kind of does that. There's a few interesting characters that are met along the way, but they're not seen for a long time. They eventually sort of come back, but like they're not important, and they're eventually just never seen again. These are both useless. Well, not never seen again. They eventually just are gone for a long term, and that's not very interesting. But then, and this is a fairly hefty spoiler, but like, I think the part that really made me personally lose interest in the story is he finds like, oh, this ultimate weapon, which is like robots, that can wipe out all of humanity. And for some reason he decides, hey, let's use this to like force humanity to fight each other by, you know, attacking them with it. And it sort of, it's just not, it's probably like, once it got, well, actually no, when it really lost my interest was a little bit earlier, when they got into this like, it's framed as if it's some huge reveal, but it does not matter at all. Where it's like revealed, oh, the character thought their name was Mu Young the entire time, but actually that wasn't their name, that was the name of some assassin from their previous life, whose magical watch they had read. The magical watch is like the the magic watch is the thing that is used in the world to track, you know, stats and stuff. Which every story that has just like RPG stats needs some sort of mechanism for checking them. And that's what they went with for this, where with like this watch, you can read other people's watches, and the reason he didn't go insane as after being forced to be an assassin his whole time there is because he was reading other people's watches, but the big reveal is that he did go insane because he didn't even know his own name, except none of this matters. Like, it might matter in a story that actually had compelling characters, but like, the main character is in no way compelling. Like, there's nothing about the main character that makes him interesting, really. Like, he's just, oh, I know everything, I'm perfect, etc., etc. Like, there's nothing about him that really makes him a fun character. I'm gonna die. I don't know how to beat Megadeth. Okay, good to know. I hate those attacks because they just last so long after they're fired. I'm gonna die here. Okay, I got revived with 3 health. If I deal enough damage, I might be fine. Okay, if I can just get super duper lucky here. Okay, I got absolutely turned around because it switched directions and it couldn't react fast enough because I'm bad at this game and I've not actually fought that. So I lost that. I'll have to do another run on, I'm just gonna stick with normal death. But I've unlocked the Gunslinger. When you dash, you deal 50% more damage for 1 second, and you regain stamina on reload. So he's all about shoot, dodge, and if you get the reload on dash, it might apply to that. I mean, I technically have both. Actually, no, I don't think this one will count towards unlocking the doppelganger, but let's just try it. It's a different type of character. And this was the one that I felt was going to be more annoying to unlock, so... Okay, this is probably not a very interesting character. Yeah, it's not very interesting. Maybe their gimmick is... Actually, I bet it would be great with the gun I had on my last run. That was one-shot reload, so I could, like, dodge, shoot. That would... It would shoot, it would hit him, it would refresh my dodge. And then I could, like, spam dodge, constantly deal a ton of damage. It's probably really good on those. Well, you definitely want a reload-based gun. Soul Hearts are boring. But... Yes, but King of the Battlefield is, I would say, kind of not the best story. It reminds me of another, probably Korean story that I tried reading that also, like, some of these stories try to do too much. I kind of want to see how this applies. If I dodge twice and shoot, do I get 2 back? No. But I do have a lot more stamina now, it's kind of funny. But... Ugh, still no bombs. But yeah. There's a bunch of these Korean novels that I've read that they're obviously not the ultimate high tier writing, but to me there seems to be a habit of, like, after a certain point in the story trying to change stuff up and as a side effect just kind of losing the plot. Like, there was some weird story centered around, like a main character plays video games. They got backstabbed playing video games, and then they lost all their money, so they assassinated, like, with a gun in reality, the person who ruined their life, which is absolutely wild as a story premise. But then it's like, they do this, and then after a while it's just sort of, like, if you aren't willing to buy into that basic weird premise, it would lose interest instantly. But even more, this premise can't carry it through the entire story of what, even to, like, chapter 200 or whatever I got to. The Piranha Gun's bad from what I've tried. This has capacity, way more attacks per second. yeah, those sorts of stories are kind of iffy sometimes. Today's gonna be very short because today was just a weird day. Oh, shoot! I desperately need bombs. I'm gonna finish this run, and then I'm probably gonna stop there, even though it's pretty short for today. It's just... today was just a weird day. That's definitely better than that. But... it's just gonna be very short compared to what I've been aiming for, which is at least an hour. Generally I was aiming for 2, but I'm not good at talking about structured topics for that long. Because I don't have that much to talk about because I don't plan it out, which maybe I should, but yeah, I talked about those for a bit. I could go back to Douluo Dalu for a bit, and like, it kind of has, I think one interesting part about it is that it's sort of a reincarnated in another world type story, but what's kind of interesting is that it wasn't like reincarnated from a realistic modern world. It was reincarnated from a world with like hidden weapons that can poison people in a 15-foot radius and kill them instantly. Like it was definitely from a fantastical world, which is like, it's an interesting twist. Like, the only value this had was it helped, like, the main character had an inhuman amount of discipline from birth and knowledge of, like, it was all about, okay, this carrot can't be hit by me, but he hit me. Like, he had knowledge of hidden weapons because he was part of a sect that made hidden weapons, and that is relevant to the plot. But most of the, like, there's no, or not much about his past life that ever is brought up as if it matters, which is kind of fun. Like, it's just a basic, he has this info, he has this knowledge, he uses it, and that's it. There's no attempt at, like, he had major issues in his past life and he needs to adapt. It's just... Does it bounce? Feels like it should. It's just, he has additional knowledge and he uses it, which I think is like, it's... I think acceptable. Random helmet, offhand item. I'm not even gonna chance Mega Death, because I have no idea how to beat it. I should just see if this hurts. It does. Does this hurt? It does. Okay, this is... Oh, I thought it'd be better, but no, it's just way more frustrating to shoot with. Oh, what a wild pattern. Shooting from the same place 3 times in a row. The extent to which you can kind of stand still is kind of wild and fun. But yeah. Like... I guess another part of Douluo Dalu that's kind of fun is, to an extent, there is like, so like most of these types of stories, the main character is the best at everything. He trains faster, better than everyone. He's young, but then there is actually a character who is introduced who is able to keep up slash go maybe a little faster than he can, which is like neat. I mean, spoilers, there's a explicit reason that it was revealed later why they were able to, which like, yeah, there needs to, if there's a reason, there's a reason, but it's, I think the story did a compelling job of justifying having a character who could keep up with somebody who is, you know, inhumanly fortunate. It's like, instead of just saying, oh, they keep up because they keep up, they manage to actually keep up because they also have something about them that is special, which is cool. Which is like, the main thing is that it's fun that there's another character who naturally keeps up, which is nice. This run is not good. Like, I'm relying on this like mediocre auto crossbow. I've never noticed that text up there. Upgrades are key. The upgrades. Okay, that's useful. I still need like a one-shot weapon that's like one-shot reload. Like the railgun or whatever would be great. Or the one I had just before would be great too, but these guys are annoying because they actually fully heal when they go to the next phase, which is kind of a letdown. It would be fun if you could actually like bring them both low and then work from that, but I'm gonna die. See, I shouldn't be able to just stand still in a boss phase like that. Still gonna lose because I haven't gotten any health upgrades or anything, and I'm bad at this game, so not going the best, but yeah, those are the books that I had thought about talking about today. They're books that I read now several years ago now, and they're also like, Douluo Dalu is pretty long, like, it's definitely not like a Chinese cultivation novel length, but it does, I think, sort of drag on eventually. But I think part of the reason that it drags on is because, oh wait, yeah, I've gotten like so few stats. Part of the reason that I think it drags on is, I don't know which is best. Lightning's pretty good. What makes it drag on? I think I might grab this. What makes it drag on is the fact that the power, like, scaling goes crazy. This is so bad. Why is it so bad? Like, the power scaling goes crazy because it is introduced that there is a method to, you know, ascend to godhood by, oh, I can't remember what the specific logic was, whether it's at least partially completing trials, which the moment a story adds trials to complete, you know that's going to take a long time. was either going to take a long time or it's going to take 2 chapters to finish them all. It's nowhere, like, nothing in between 2 chapters or, like, 60 to finish the trials. Oh, I'm so bad I got hit. Yeah, that's sort of what caused it to, in my opinion, drag on eventually. This is gonna let me heal. Right? Is it gonna clean? Yes, perfect. Gold. I'm gonna die. Oh, this is not the worst boss. Wait, do all of my shots trigger? It looks like every shot in the time might trigger the bonus. I've never seen this. I've never seen this. Yeah. The power scale goes out of whack, and like one sort of negative. Oh, actually, they even add an additional method of strength gain at one point, where instead of just collecting the rings from the spirit beasts, they start having to try to collect bones that give an alternate form of power-up. And that is like adding a separate like progression system causes more potential for stalling in the story because what's this? Oh, faster stamina regen. But because of there being an increased... Oh, I'm bad. There being a second system for getting stronger, it forces the story to... Oh god, I really need dexterity. Because the character obviously needs to become as strong as they possibly can, it then will stall because stall in making progress isn't just strength upgrades. Because before they can, you know, fight the current big bad, they need to be as strong as possible. To be as strong as possible, they need to collect, like, arms, body, head, legs, which actually, remembering, these are actually introduced fairly early. But it's eventually... It's later in the story that it is changed to be able to have more of them and have them fuse and stuff. Okay, 2 more stamina is 10% more. That might be better than this. It's not better than this now, but it has a certain degree of utility. But yeah, that's sort of what I think kind of killed my interest in reading it. Admittedly, it's also because I think whoever was translating it on their own sort of free time, I think stalled out for a bit, and so if I wanted to get back into reading it, I would have felt like I needed to start over, and it's just a lot of reading it for like the 2nd or 3rd time at that point, and it was barely... It's not a good enough story that I could read it like a dozen times. There's some books that I've read like half a dozen times, and I would still reread them now and then, because it was partially because they're fun to read, just how they're written is fun, and because there's a certain degree of simplicity I feel that is required. to be able to maintain, like, the rereadability of stories without... If it requires effort to read, that will make it more difficult to read repeatedly, because if you know what's going to happen and it takes a long time to get to the point, it's not as... It's a lot harder to bring yourself to reread something when it's super slow at getting to the points that you already know are going to happen. At least for me. Okay, the fire one seems better. But, yeah, so I've been meaning to reread it in the, you know, past few years, but I've also been meaning to try to reread the weird sequels, but the sequels are kind of... My understanding is they're kind of more of the same. But there's a certain level of, like, sometimes there's a story going on, and even if it's not great, you still want to know where it will lead. This is not what I wanted. It could be good. Probably worse than this, but... Like, you want to know where it goes, even if it's just an extended story that's incredibly mediocre. Like, it's sort of... I think I managed to actually read, like, most of Naruto just because I kind of wanted to get to the point where it was interesting, and then I got a little bit past where it started to be interesting. It was, at that point, it was just kind of, who cares? Because it's not an exceptional story. Okay, this gun is terrible. Well, it's not a gun, it's a bow. This damage is so bad. This isn't much better, but... Rare weapon is probably worth more. I mean, that's probably pretty good. BC, BD, BB. Bleed, status and inflictions, 5 attacks per second, 2 attacks per second. Much higher damages, will hit twice. Let's just go with that one. Get rid of that. I don't know why I'm still carrying that. And this is probably not going to be better unless it pierces. I should have gone for the shrine because that's permanent. I mean, this is at least AoE. That is pretty good. But yes, what I was thinking of is how some stories are at least interesting enough in that they go to a crazy point that you want to know how it gets there. And sort of the idea of there being a 5th Soul Land book set in the same universe, referencing previous characters, is interesting because I can't imagine it being like a reasonable progression, but if somehow it is, it would be so good. I'll keep that for now. D, B, these are all the same scaling. This is infusion. I don't know if it infuses weapon. Is this like... Yeah, so it might be a permanent thing that I should always just activate right away. But yeah, that's sort of the appeal of the later books to me, is the idea that, like, the story kind of loses any semblance of, I don't know, seriousness. Because when the final book, spoilers, when the final book has the main character from the first book who ascended to godhood, dying and reincarnating in search of their wife reincarnation, like, seeing how it possibly could get to that and where it could go from there is interesting, because it is, like, super over the top. And, like, after it gets to the 5th series of books, it's probably just, they don't have too much new. But, you know, I can't really hold it against them, because it's not, like, the setting is pretty solid with, like, how different, like, with how the people get their, yes, the people have spirits that are part of them from birth that sort of determines their use, like, what they can do. And part of that is, like, part of what is interesting to me about it is how it's, like, there's tool spirits, beast spirits, and, like, different things have different applications, and, like, this, I don't know if it was plant spirits or a specific type of spirit. I think plant spirits are a specific type of spirit. Okay, I need to use that. Like, it's a decently compelling setup that can be used again and again, to an extent, as long as the spirits that are introduced and used have sufficiently unique, like, elements. Which, like, it's a broad enough setup that it allows for a large amount of repetition before it becomes, like, too repetitive. Because if every new installation has a new collection of, like, spirit powers, it's much more, like, it's sort of like, to a certain extent, Pokemon, where every new game, it does have a different story, same as these, but, like, there's a new story, but there's also new Pokemon, because I don't think it would have ever been possible for this Pokemon series to maintain the 150 Pokemon for more than, what, like, 2 games. Like, even that would be a stretch. But, like, it would have been a stretch. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, this feels like it's just worse. I regret my choice. But like with Pokemon, having basically the spirit powers in the stories are like a Pokemon. If you, like, introducing new ones can keep it fresh, and it makes it for a pretty repeatable setting that is not troubling to revisit. Because there's plenty of stories where... Why? Someone's a pigeon? Where? Okay, I have to equip it. Like... Weird. And kind of interesting. I'm gonna do that. Pigeon seems way funnier. Okay, pigeon is funny. Pigeon is very funny. But, yes. This is useless, but... but by having like they with their first book in this universe. Oh, it homes. They created a world that could very easily be revisited, and then they did. Like, it's understandable that with a world that is super easy to like add just enough new stuff to keep it fresh and, you know, tell a different story every time if they can, but like they can tell a relatively similar fundamental story as long as the specific details have changed. And like, because I assume every entry does or can add new spirits, they can just keep telling a relatively similar story, which I don't know if they are. Maybe all of them have enough of a change that it's interesting. Like, they could tell the same story, which, like, Pokemon tells almost the same story in at least half of its entries, with like, oh, you know, here you are trying to get gym badges, a team of ne'er-do-wells wants to stop you. And like, you have to fight them, you have to deal with them, you have to get past them, and it's more or less the same thing every time. With the specifics being what change. And like, this is the same thing. They can write a story in the same world. It has slight changes here and there. But that's all that they need. All they need are enough. They need to change enough that it's not the same story. But they don't need to reinvent the wheel for each book. So like, I respect that they have revisited it. It might be, I wouldn't be surprised if the last 2 or 3 books were kind of generally worse, but maybe all the ones after are great. It's not something you can just assume because there's 5 series in the same world. You can't assume that they're bad. Like, there's a reasonable chance that they're not great, but there's no reason to be like, they're definitely bad. Decent character, not very interesting. Like, their special ability, I guess, probably gave me a fair bit of damage. Because if I need to find it. Yeah, 50% more damage for 1 second. That seems to apply for the entire, every shot during that span. Once you get enough stamina, you can just keep up 50% at all time. That's probably pretty good. But I mean, I was lucky to get as much stamina as I did. It would have been so good with that, like, reload on dodge with a one-shot super high damage gun like a railgun or the BFG reference. But that's where I'm stopping today, because today was a weird day and I don't feel like trying to go for another hour. So anyone who watched, thank you for watching, and I will probably be back Monday doing basically the same thing. I'll try to actually not throw and fight Megadeth just to unlock the last, so that I can unlock the doppelganger and I'll have all the characters unlocked. And I might play it a little more in the same week, but I'll probably be moving to something else. Or moving towards something else. Like, one game that I started playing, but I don't actually enjoy that much, is Peglin. Peglin, which is like the Peggle Goblin, is interesting, but it's so frustrating because it's all about random bouncing, and it bugs me far too much for me to really enjoy. But yes, goodbye.